Okay, all right. So it's already 8:04. 8:04. So I'm gonna start the session. So good evening, everyone. I have up to 90 attendees today, 90 participants. So good evening to everyone. So my name is Sam Goli, and I'm your lecturer for today's session. So I hope you enjoy today's class. So before the class start, so this is your second class, right? So I just gonna have a small maybe survey of people who think that they can catch up whatever you have learned for the past sessions. So if you think you are catching up, maybe you are not getting everything understood, but you are catching most of them. Please raise your hand. Just like maybe give me a reaction or something. Yeah, I can. Okay. Yeah, see participants raising their hands, right? All right. Yeah, so it's only 20 of you. So most of you are not knowing what is going on. So never mind. Learning programming is like this. So you might not understand everything at first. The first time you learn that thing. So you might maybe understand in the future. After you gradually catching it up. Okay. So don't worry for too much, and we continue to our session today. All right. Okay. So welcome to the second lecture. Today we're gonna learn types, methods, and condition. So I'm gonna let you have a glance of what are we going to learn in today's session. So first, I'm gonna review some the knowledge that you have learned uh, from the last session, and then we're gonna learn more types, methods, and conditional. So basically, just three part new things. Okay, so be prepared and relax. Okay, so lecture one. So for the past session, you have learned different data types, right? You have integer, you have double, you have string, and you can have boolean. And then you have learned to declare variables. Like I can declare a variable called a. There's a string data type, and then I use this equal sign to assign a string to it. Okay, so and then you can concatenate it. You can add it together. Okay, so and you have learned operators. Okay, this is assignment, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Right? So this is what you learn. And then for the past session, you have one exercise, which is this gravity calculator, right? So this one. So I just gonna have a simple explanation on how are you going to apply the knowledge you've learned to solve this problem. Okay, so basically this is a physics equation, right? So if you are from SPM or whatever, if you are learning physics, you're gonna definitely face this. So if you say, I don't want to calculate it, I want to use Java to help me to calculate it. So our answer is definitely yes, you can. So you gotta be smart. So how are you going to apply? We can change all this. You can change, there's A, there's T, there's different variables, right? So you just can declare the variables and assign a value to it. So let's say your A has a value, is a double, right? Has a value of negative 9.81. So can create a variable, gravity, representing the A and assign a value to it. Okay, so same applies to time. This is falling time. It is 10 seconds. And V, your initial velocity is 0. And then your initial position is 0. So at last, you can finally get your final position function. Okay, so you can see the function is 0.5 times gravity and times twice the falling time because it's square, and this value is stored in here, in this, right? So but the formula is have an end. There's still a part, right? So but never mind, this part is safe in your current variable. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna reassign the final position with itself with the value stored in here, and plus initial velocity times falling time and plus another initial position. Okay, so basically this is how you apply assigning variables, declaring variables to solve any problems you face. Okay, so don't worry, we will go through it during the demo sessions. Okay, so are there any questions from? I think yeah, I think if you have any questions, you can just ask in the chat box and our TA will reply you. Okay. All right. So we're gonna enter our main topic today. So first, more type. So beside all those, so in this part, I'm gonna tell you like you need to like take care and be aware of something, because as the division operator may operate differently on integers and doubles. Okay, so we can have double 5.0 divided by 0.2. So it's definitely 2.5, right? So your A will be 2.5. Okay, but what happens if you put 5 divided by 2? Mathematically, it's still 2.5, right? But after you've done this operation, since it's integer, the computer will ignore the decimal. It will ignore the 0.5. Okay, so what will be assigned into this C? It will be 2 only. Okay, so what is the point behind this? You just need to remember that Java, when you are talking with the computer using Java, you just need to know that your computer is basically like your English teacher, who is very strict with the grammar thing. So remember, whenever you are doing communicating with the computer using Java, you need to be very strict of the grammar. Okay, so this is what I'm emphasizing today. Okay, so besides the grammar of the Java is also same like the mathematical. You can you have precedence like math from left to right, and then you have parentheses to cover it if you want to execute the calculation first. Okay, so mismatch types. Yeah, so this is where the part the grammar kicks in. It is very important. So you declare a thing, a variable called 5, but it is a string, but you assign an integer to it. So definitely your English teacher wouldn't accept this, right? So to your English teacher, it will be an error value, because this is an integer or this is a string data type. Okay, so the computer cannot understand you. Yeah, so you need to be careful whenever you declaring assigning value to a data type. It need to be the same data type. All right. So conversion by casting. Okay. So okay, first, if you declare integer a equals to 2, so definitely there's no problem. But this is a data type, this is a double data type, and you are assigning an integer to it. So in this situation, the computer will understand you, but it will auto translate your 2 into a 2.0, 2.0. Okay, so this is because this is a double and it has decimal point. Right? So second situation, you have integer a, but you assign a double value to it. That's decimal. So same situation, your computer wouldn't understand it because this is double or this is an integer. So what can you do to, you want to correct it? You can use what we call type casting. So by casting an integer type in front of it, you can tell the computer, oh, this value, you need to interpret it as integer. Okay, so after you cast this, the computer can understand, oh, the a should be 18. Okay, because it will ignore the decimal. Okay, and then the third situation, when we are assigning integer value to a double. So okay, so after 2 divided by 3, so the value is 0.666, right? But since this is integer and this is also integer, so when you divide these two, definitely you get integer value, right? So integer value for this, the computer will auto ignore this side, this part. Because this is integer divided by integer, so after you get a value, it will become 0. You will ignore the decimal point. Okay, so but you want to get this, assign this value to a double data type. So what can you do? You can use this casting as well. You just need to tell the computer, oh, you need to interpret this as a double value. So then only the computer knows. Okay, this is double and it will store 0.666 into 8. Okay, yeah, so basically this is what we call typecasting. The syntax is you just put a type you want for the computer to interpret, and then you can do it. This is how we do it. Okay. All right. So that sums up the more type parts. So basically, what I want to emphasize is that to Java, the grammar is extremely important. So just think of it like your secondary school English teachers who is very strict with your grammar thing. If there's something wrong, he would misinterpret. So you need to get this grammar right, correct. Okay. Yeah. So that's the part. So I'm gonna skim through everything, so you don't need to be worried. You might not understand some parts inside the slides. We'll have demonstrating the actual situation later. Okay. So okay, we have done with the data type. With the integer, we have the double, we have the boolean. Okay, let me check on whether we have any questions. Okay, no questions. All right. Okay, so that's a data type part. So now we're gonna enter methods. Okay, methods. Okay, this is very familiar to you, right? So this line is what you basically write in your Java program, right? Yeah, so this is also a method. Okay, it's what we call main method. Okay, so you can see all these there's many things, many definition, right? So you don't worry about it. Later I'll come back to this. Okay, so basically what is the concept of method? I just let you have a glance of this. This is an example of a relatively big program. Okay, you have the main method, which is very familiar to you, which is you have been typing in this during your previous sessions. Okay, so now we're gonna explore outside this. Or what can we do outside this? You have this main method, right? So outside this main method, you can have different methods also. Okay, so what are the difference? So what is the concept of method? So a method basically is an action that you are going to carry out. Okay, so you can have you don't need to go so worry about the grammar thing first. I just gonna explain the concept of method to you. So a method is basically an action. Remember that Java is a thing you can create or model real life object. So for an example, we human, we have method. We can run, we can eat, we can maybe jump, we can dive, right? So these are the methods that we have. Okay, so these are the actions. So you might ask, what is the difference between here, this method, and this main method? So the difference is we can declare all those run, eat, fly method at here, at this part. That means that we have this action, we can carry out this action. But when are we going to execute it? So the time when we are executing is in this main method. Okay, so basically this part is some sort of like the execution list, and while this part is the action that you can carry out. Okay, so this might sound abstract to you, but I just gonna maybe use an example. So this is me, right? So this is basically me. So I'm Sammy. So I can have I can run. Okay, I can also eat. Okay, I can also. Okay, so these are the methods or the actions that I can carry out. But I'm executing it. I'm in here executing it. So this is the executing list. So if I type here run, I'm gonna execute run. Okay, so that's the difference between main method and this part method that we're gonna learn today. Okay, so I hope that is clear. So don't worry too much. And then so we're gonna explore the methods then how to define your own method. Okay, so adding method. So the grammar is like this: public static void, and you can have your own name. Like what I created just now is run and eat, right? So basically these here are the statement. So how to call the method? Just call the method by typing the name you have defined just now. Okay, so this is a very basic method. Okay, so yeah, this is the example. So we have a class new line, and you have one method called new line and another method called tree lines. Okay, so what is exactly happening in the execution? So we're gonna see one step by step. So this is your main method, and then we have system.out.print line 1. Okay, and then we call this method. This is what we call method calling. Okay, so what happens at this line? So when you're executing this line, this tree line, if you call this method, yeah, if you execute this method, tree line, and then we're gonna see what statement is this method about. So this method is will execute new line. So this new line will point to this method. Okay, so we're gonna see what is this method doing. This method is basically printing an empty line. Okay, so what basically is this method doing is basically just creating 3 empty line. Okay, yeah, so that's it. That's the very basic method that you can have. Okay, so what you just need to remember, when you call it in the main method, if you execute the method that you have defined, then what if you execute this inside. So if in the inside you have called another method, then it will point to the method you have defined. So if you execute this, so if you execute it 3 times. Okay, so this is method. So next type of method is with parameters, methods with parameters. So the grammar for it is public static void, and then name you can call it, and then inside the parentheses there's type name, and then how we call it, we're gonna declare a name, and then we're gonna put an argument into it. So let's just see the example. Okay, so you have this main, you have this method called print square, and then it accepts one integer x, and then let's see what it really does. Okay, so we're gonna see the main method. This is where your program execute. So you declare a value called variable called value, and the value is 2. So then you call this method. So basically your method is holding a value 2, right? So this will invoke this method, and then this 2, basically this is 2, this value will be passed into this x. Okay, this x, so this part will become 2, the x will become 2. So what then if you carry x equals 2, and then we carried out this statement, so it will print out 2 multiplied by 2. Okay, so this is the first line, and then the second line, if you print square 3, so this x, you pass this 3 into this x, and then the system will do, you print out 3 multiplied by 3. Okay, yeah, so that's the method with parameters. So you can pass in value to this method, to let it do something with the value you give to it. Okay. Yeah, so don't worry too much. We'll skim through. Okay. So yeah, you know that there's method with parameters, right? So you can basically have endless parameters. You can have one, you can have two. You don't want any parameters, also can. So you can even create up to 5 parameters. Okay. So and then to call the method, you must follow the order. Argument 1 will be passed into this, and argument 2 will be passed to this. Okay, so if you have 2 parameters here, you must call the method with by passing 2 value to it. Okay, so let's see lah. Basically the same. So the main method times you pass 2 value inside it, so A will be 2, your B will also be 2. Okay, so then the system will print out 2 multiplied by 2. Okay, yeah, so this is the same with the method with parameters. Just you can create any number of parameters as you like. Okay, so yeah, I'll let you digest it. I'm gonna see if there's any questions here. It is simple. Yeah. After method. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So some of you don't understand the parentheses. Basically, this parenthesis is carrying the parameters. Okay. So if there's empty parenthesis with empty with nothing inside it, so this is a method without parameter. Method without parameter. So if you have parameter inside the parentheses, then you have parameter. Okay, and then this will means the block. Okay. All right. So we're gonna enter the next type of method, which is method with return value. So what is this type? Let's see its grammar. It's public static return type and method name. So what is the difference? The difference here is we have return type comparing to void. So what is the difference? Basically void, you just execute the code inside the block, the method block, right? But if you assign a return type with this block will return a value. Okay, so your return type can be string, integer, double boolean. So sounds abstract, right? So we're gonna see an example. Okay, so you have a method called square, and then it is a double type. Okay, so let's see what it will do. So in the main method, the first time you print out, and then you call the method square, and then you pass in the value 5, right? Pass in the value 5, and then this method, it will execute 5 multiplied by 5, and then it will return the value, which is 25 in this case, to this method. So this will be 25. So the system will basically be printing 25, right? Yeah. So this is the difference. So if you assign a double type, then you have this line. It will return something to your method calling. So similarly, if here is void, you won't have this line, and the method will basically execute whatever inside it, and then you won't have this block, this line. Okay, yeah, so that's the difference. Okay, so variable scope, basically it just means I just gonna glance through. I just gonna let you have the concept of it. So you can see, just now someone asked what is this thing, this bracket means, right? So this bracket just means the block. Okay, so you have this outer block, this inner block, and then this is the outer block. Okay, So if you are creating integer y equals to 0, right? So inside here, you will change it to 72. Okay, so basically this whatever variable you create inside the block, you cannot be accessed outside. Okay, so basically this is just for you to clarify there's a block. So this is an inner block and this is an outer block. This is what we call variable scope. Okay, so don't worry, later the demo will be demonstrate to you. So we just glance through this part. Okay, so methods, building blocks, basically is the same thing. Okay, so and then we have is mathematical functions. So these are all methods, and then Java itself, it has inbuilt methods for us. So it has the method math, sine, cosine. So this is all method. This is the method name, and then this is the value that we are passing into the parameter. Okay, so this is the inbuilt method. Okay, so just a basic summary to it, to you all. The way we create a method, the syntax or the grammar to it is public static, which with return type, in which this will become can be void, can be integer, can be double, can be string, and then you have method name, and then in here you have your parameter. Okay, with a parenthesis enclosing it, then you have this method block. So if your return type is void, you don't need to this return. But if you have integer or maybe double, then you need to have this return something. Okay. So how do we call a method? We call it by the name. You define it, and then we pass the parameter. So if you define your method without any parameter, so when you call it, definitely you won't need anything. So if you create two parameters, so you have to call it two parameters by passing two value to it. Okay, so return value according to the return type. Yeah, so this is basically the syntax or grammar to it and the way to call the method. Okay, so yeah, so we have done with the methods part. Okay, so don't worry, later you can define your own method with our demo. Okay, so to the last part of our slide today is conditional. So what is conditional? You want to execute something only if you face some condition. Okay, so this is what we call conditional. So we use the if statement, the grammar of it. Okay, you can have if and then parentheses, condition. So if the Java will system will interpret if this condition is true, then only if you execute the statement inside this block. So if the condition is false, you will just skip this. It won't execute anything. Okay, let's see an example. You have this. This is one method, and this is your main method. Okay, so you're going to test 6. So what is this test doing? This method doing? So we just see. Yeah, so inside this method, you have one conditional. Only if the x is greater than 5, then it will execute this line, which if you print out x is greater than 5. Okay, so let's see one by one what is the outcome of it. So if you test 6, 6 will be your x, right? It will be passed inside your x. So if 6 is greater than 5, this condition is true. So it will execute this block. Okay, but if you test 5, basically your x is not greater than 5, right? It's actually equal. So what the system will do, it will just auto skip. It won't execute this block. All right. Okay, so not only we have greater than, you can have smaller than, you can have equal, greater or equal, smaller or equal, and not equal. So take note, if you want to compare two values, you need to use two equal sign. Not one. If one is assignment, but if you want to check is equality, you use two, double equal. Okay. So besides, you can have Boolean operators which is you can then have and you can have or. So why are we using this? Because we can need so this is for you to check two conditions at the same time. So let's say you want to make it only if x greater than 6 and only if x is smaller than 9, then only if you will execute your statement. So this is basically same as this condition. So if you use this logical get AND, it will only execute this block only if both conditions are true. Okay. So yeah, so that's the Boolean operators. So let's say if I change this to logical OR, so this block will execute if either one of the condition is true. Okay. And then this is Boolean operators, logical AND, logical OR, and you have the NOT. Okay. So yeah. So continuing, what if you wanna, like, maybe you have want the system to execute another statement if the condition doesn't match? So you can have else. Okay. So if this condition is false, it will skip this, then it will execute this instead. Right? So example will be same. It will be the test. So in this test, it will check if x is greater than 5, it will execute this. If not, then it will execute this instead. Yeah, so basically you get the concept of it. Later we're gonna demo it to you. Okay. So beside else, what if you want to check maybe 2 or even more, maybe up to 5 conditions? You can use else if. Okay. So if this condition is true, then it will execute this statement. So if it is false, oh, okay, all right, I will check the second condition. Okay, if you use else if, then it will check the second condition. So if this condition is true, okay, I'm gonna execute this statement. But if in case this condition is false also, it will check this next condition. Okay, so basically you can put as many else if condition as you like to check to execute the condition according to your to what you define. Okay, so if all of it doesn't, the condition doesn't match what you want, it will execute this else. So else is basically like a guarding point. Okay. Yeah. So don't worry, we will demo this to you later. It's basically the same concept. Okay. So basically, this is what we call conditional. You can check condition and then execute the code or the program based on the condition you want. Okay. So I have finished the lecture basically, so I'm gonna skim through what questions you have. Yeah, you just take time to digest everything. All right.
Alright guys, and that was our lecture for session 2. Before we get to the tutor session, would you like a recap of the session? We have prepared one recap for you guys. And yes.
Okay, so there's no question. Can we return multiple value like x, y? Yeah, basically it cannot. Okay, so why? Because one method you can only assign one type to it. Okay, so if this is integer, then you can only return one integer value. So the answer is no. You can only return one value for one method. Okay. All right. So so above is the main concept of today's class, and this is your little exercise. you're gonna make a small program with base a print pay based on the base pay and hours work. So basically, it's like a salary program lah. Okay, so if overtime more than 40 hours, you will pay 1.5 times base pay. So this you'll be using the conditional concept. All right, so you can implement this later. Okay, so in final words, I'll be concluding this. We have learned basically two main things I'm gonna emphasize. So one is remember that Java is or the computer when you are communicating with the computer, it is very strict with the grammar. So treat it like your English grammar teacher. Okay, you must get your grammar correct. If not, the computer might be a little stupid. It will misinterpret your what you intend to do. Okay, so but okay, so but sometimes, so what is this? This is just a little skill. If you wanna put 5, so if without this, right, this is a string, but if without the open bracket, the open, this will basically is integer. But what if you say, oh, I want it to be a string? So can you do it? Yes, you can. So you can use this. This is also one of the inbuilt method. Okay, so you will pass this 5, integer 5, to this integer, and this method will change this thing into string. Okay, so this will become string value and assigned to this. Okay, or another way you can do is you create this open and close and plus integer 5. Okay, so this is just empty, but the system will read, oh, there's a string, so we can concatenate it as a string. Okay, so in this way you can convert integer to string, and then besides we can convert string to integer. Okay, so you can also use the inbuilt method, which is pass integer. All right, so this is also comparison operator, and you can read this afterwards. So that's basically what you have learned today. All right, so okay, so before I pass, I hand in my mic, the presentation to our tutor. You can have maybe a small 2-minute break, and we'll come back at 8:43. You can maybe digest everything you have learned, and then after at 8:43, we're gonna start the tutor sessions. All right. So that's all from me. So thanks everyone. After 8:43, we're gonna proceed to the tutor session.
Excuse me. Can we go back to the slide where the assignment is being assigned?
Sam. Sam, are you there?
Yep, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. So it's already 8:44. So let me start the tutorial session. So good evening to everyone. I will be one of your tutors for tonight. Okay, my name is Frankie. So let me straight away start the demonstration. So first I will create a Java file, which is newline.java. So you can see here, a few lines of code are already generated for you by the IDE. So let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. So first, this is just the syntax, the Java syntax to create a class. So this class is public, which means that everyone can access the code inside the class. Okay. And then this is the class keyword for creating a class. And this is the class name, new line. So the class name must same as the Java file name if the class is public. So, in Java naming conventions, so it is a good practice to use title case for the class name. So you can see here, capital letter N and capital letter L. So let me create a main method. So main method is just the entry point of the program. So whenever you run the code, okay, then the computer will find your main method and execute the code inside it. So you can see here. So this is the parenthesis, and inside the parenthesis is the parameters. And then you have open and close curly braces. So this open and close curly braces is just the boundaries for your main method. So what basically inside within the open and curly braces, the code inside it belong to this main method. Also, you can see here, the class also has the open and close curly braces. So this main method is belongs to this new line class. Okay. So I want to print out something to the terminal. So this is line 1 and this is line 2. So let me save the file and then I will run the code. So you can see the output in the terminal, line 1 and line 2. So I want to change this program a little bit so that I can print a blank line between this line 1 and line 2. Okay, I'm done. Then I will run the code again. Okay, then you can see the output here. Line 1 and then followed by a blank line and then line 2. What if I want to print multiple lines between line 1 and line 2? So I can do like this. I just copy this code and then paste it for multiple times. Okay, and then I will run it again. So you can see here the output, which is line 1 and line 2 that have multiple blank lines in between them. Okay. But one important thing to keep in mind is that don't repeat yourself. So when you found that you are repeating something, so you will just maybe it can have a better way to do this. let me modify this code a little bit to make it better. So as you learn from the lecture, we can use a method. So let me create a method, public static void. This void just means that this method returns nothing. And then I will give this method a name. I can just call it new line, followed by parentheses, and then open and close curly braces. So this parentheses does not contain any parameters because we will not use it now. Okay. Inside this method, we will print a blank line. Okay. So I save the program and run the code again. Something weird happened because initially I want to print a blank line in between the line 1 and line 2, but for now I only got line 1 followed by line 2. Okay. So what's wrong with my code? Okay. So I will just check it one line by line. Okay. So you can see here, first I print out the line 1 and then the line 2. Okay, so when you want to use a method, you must call the method by its name. Okay, so I type here the method name followed by the parentheses to invoke this method. Okay, because I want to use the code inside the method. Okay. So I run the program, and then the program successfully give me the output that I wanted. Okay, it's just line 1 and followed by a blank line and then line 2. Okay, so that's how you can use a method. But if I want to print another 2 lines in between the line 1 and line 2, so I can do like this. Okay. You see, I added 2 lines of code which I call the method by its name. So I save the program and then run the Java code. Okay. You can see here, line 1 followed by 3 blank lines and then line 2. So I'm repeating myself for now. Okay, so if I want to print this multiples line, maybe I can create another method. Okay. It's okay to have multiple methods inside your Java class. So I will call this method 3 lines, which its name indicate that this method will be used to print out 3 blank lines. So inside the method, I will call the new line method for 3 times. Okay, sorry for my typo. And then I can just remove these 3 lines and replace it with the 3 lines method that I just created. Okay, so I run the program. You can see now I'm doing the same thing, but the code is more organized now. So whenever I want to print 3 blank lines, I could just call these methods. Maybe you have some extra line here. Okay, so these are just the codes. And then I want to use the 3 lines method again. So I call it by its name and followed by the open and close parentheses. Okay. So this is the output. You see here, 3 lines and another 3 lines. Okay. So now I will continue to the next program in the lecture slides, which is the square.java. So you can see here, the same as before, this code are auto-generated for us by the IDE. And then in every program, we need a main method. Okay. So this program is just basically to print out the square of a value. So what we can do is we can type sys out, okay, and then 2 multiplied by 2. So we run the code. So we will get the output of 4. We can even use the variables to store the value of 2. And then inside here, we just type values times value. So you also get the same output as before, but the use of variables can make your codes more flexible. For example, if you want to change this value, okay, you don't want to print the square of value 2 anymore, but you want to print the square value of 3. So you just run your code, and then you will get the value of 9. Okay. But if you do like this, when you want to change the value, you need to change it one by one. So it is time consuming, okay? So better we avoid doing like this. We can even use a method called print square. And this method will accept one parameters, which is of type integer, and this is the parameter name. So open and close curly braces, and then inside this method, we will just print out value times value. So I want to use this method, so I type the method name, and then inside the parentheses, we put number 2. So we run the code, okay, and then you will get number 4. Okay. So what this line of code does is it passes the parameters inside the parentheses into here. So this value will host a number 2, and then we will use the value stored inside the value, the parameters, okay. So and then it will multiply by itself. Okay. So we will get back the output of 4. What if I don't want to just print out the value inside the method, but I want to return a value to the main method for me to print out? So you can achieve this by changing this return type to integer. Okay, so what this means is just this code will return the integer value or the square of this value. Okay. So maybe we can put parentheses to make it looks more nice. Okay, and then okay, so after everything is settled, I run the code. Okay, but nothing is being outputted to the terminal. So what's wrong with my code? Because this method is no longer print out the square of the value, but it is just returned to the main method. So what I can do is I use the system.out.println, and then inside here I will use the method print square, and then I can pass the parameters of number 2. and then I run my code again. So now it prints out the square of the 2 successfully. So basically what happens here is that when we call the print square method, these parameters is get passed and stored inside the variable's name value, and then I will return the value times value. So this is the return value. So it will be returned to here and replace this print square method. So, and then I will just print out the return value. So you will get the output of 4 inside the terminal. Okay. So if we accidentally pass a wrong type of parameters, so you can see here, this parameter type is integer, but what I pass into it is a string value. So this will not work and the compiler will throw you an error. So let me run the program. So you see, here is the error, or what we call exception inside the Java. Okay. So it says that the method print square integer in the type square is not applicable for the arguments string. Okay, so arguments and parameters is just refer to the same concept, so you can use it interchangeably. Okay, so now you know that you cannot pass the wrong type of parameters, and the IDE will tells you by putting a red underline under here. Okay. So you cannot do like this. Let me proceed to the next program. Okay, so I will name this program multiply.java. Okay. So the same thing, I will start by typing the main method, and then what I want to achieve in this program is I want to print out the multiplications of the 2 double values. Okay. So what can I do is I create a method and this method will have 2 parameters of type double. Okay. So now I can print out the value of a times b. So I call this method, and then I put the value of 2 and 3 as the parameters. So I need to end it with a semicolon, so don't forget it. Okay. You can see here, it becomes 6.0. Okay, so for this line, the parameters that we pass in is the integer value of 2 and 3. But this parameter types is double. So why there is no error being thrown out by the compiler? So basically, what Java done is it implicitly converted this integer value into a double value. So 2 will become 2.0 and 3 will become 3.0, and the values are stored inside the A and B. So when you print out the multiplication of these 2 double values, So you will get back the double values as the output. So now I want to modify this program a little bit. Okay, I will make the parameters type become integer, and then I will just print it out the value of a multiplies b. But for now, I will change the values that I pass into the method. So I will change it to 2.0 and 3.0. So you can see here, although integer can be implicitly converted into a double value, but a double value cannot be converted into an integer value. If you really want to pass the values 2.0 and 3.0 into these methods, so one thing that you can do is you just apply the typecasting. Okay. So I will cast these two values into an integer. So I will run the code, and then it will give out the integer value 6. So that's what covered in the lecture slide, but I want to show you another cool stuff that you can do using a method. I'll just call this class test. Okay. So I create a new file called test.java, and inside the class, I create a main method. I create another method, and this method, I will call it print hello. And it will have a parameter types of integer. So this is just an extra knowledge. So I just want to show you, okay. So I run the code, and then you will see here, hello world is getting printed to the terminal for 5 times. So this is called the recursion. Basically, what recursion is that a method is calling the method itself. So you can see here, the same method name is being called. So this is just the base case for your program to terminate, or else it will run forever. Okay. So I think that's all. And then I will pass it to my partner, Darren.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Okay, before that, we just take a short 1-minute break. Let you all digest a bit. We will come back at 9:09. Okay, I will be starting it now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Darren, and I will be your second tutor for today's session. And I will be covering the rest of the source codes that were provided in the lecture slides just now. Okay, but basically this tutor session will be is I've written somewhat questions related to the source codes in the lecture files. And these are some of the questions that the patterns are somewhat similar to what would be asked inside an exam, or you would find it in a programming workbook. Okay. Since Frankie has explained about the multiply method, I will be continuing onwards with the square tree method inside the lecture slides. Okay, I've written based on the source codes questions about the square tree code. Okay, in this question, it asks us to design a method named print square that prints out the square of a double value. Okay, the questions ask us to design a method with a name, print square. Okay, that prints out a double value, prints out double value. Okay, from this sentence itself, we have all of the information needed to create a method. Let's first start off with creating a method with public. Okay, public static. And what should we put for the return type? You have to see the question, what does it ask you to do? The method, what is it responsible to do? The question asks you that the method itself will print out something. So in the case of printing out something, we would normally use void return type. Okay. If it asks you to return something, we will see in the following codes that you have to use a return type. Okay. In this case, it asks us to print something, so I have to use void. Normally, we would use void. Okay. And what is the name? Print square, followed by parenthesis. And remember, don't forget your curly brackets. Okay. So everything, all of the codes that are typed inside here belongs to this print square method. Okay. If you type something, one code here, let's say you type one code here outside, it doesn't belong to anyone. So it doesn't belong to this print square method. And this will give you an error. For example, I type integer n equals to 0. And this will not give you an error, but this is not included in the method itself. Okay, if you want to access n inside this method, you can, but that will be covered in the future slides. Okay, so now we will go onwards with the method itself. The method is in charge of printing out the square of a double value. So it have to return a double value. You have to print out a double value. Where does it get this double value? It will be included in the parameters of the method. So double, let's say we give it a name x. Okay. So on here onwards, this will be called x. And how do we print out? System dot out dot print line. And how do we print out x square? X square is equals to x multiplied by itself. Okay, so don't forget your semicolon. After we finish this, we can go onwards to create the main method. In the question, it says the main method pass 5 to the print square and run the code. Okay, so I create a main method and I pass 5 to the print square method. How do I pass 5 to the print square method? First, I call the method by its name, print square. Okay, print square 5. So this basically pass 5 into the print square method. Okay, so 5 will be passed into here and it will be multiplied. So what will the output? So it will output, let's see, what will the output? So it will output 25. Or please ignore this above part. This is the output for 25, okay? So what if I change it to 10? I run again the code. It will become 100.0, okay? So this is basically how you declare a method. And I will be expanding on this. You can see that this is from the lecture slides. We have the similar codes inside the lecture slides. And this one, the compiler automatically casts this 5 into a double type from what Frankie mentioned just now. Okay. Following onwards, I will be starting with square 4. Okay, similarly, this is the question for square 4. It asks us to create a method named squared that receives a double value. This method returns the square of that value. Okay, you can see of that value received. Okay, so we start with public static. Okay, what is the requirement here? Since it is say return type equals to the type that is received. So in this case, it receives a double value. So the return type, it must return a double value. So we put a double value here. If the question states that it returns a string value, so you put a string here. If the question said you receive an integer value, you put an integer here. Okay, in this case, we put double. And followed by the square. What is this? This is the method's name. And don't forget your curly brackets. That receives a double value. So in this case, the parameters for this method is double, let's say a value named x. Okay. And it says this method returns the square of the value. Declare a double variable named squared variable to store the square of the value. Okay. So I follow what the question asks. I declare a double squared variable which to store the square of the value. How do I get the square of the value? X multiplied by itself. So this is equal to x squared. And okay, you can see here. In this case, this method must return a result of type double. And here I haven't returned anything yet. Because this method, I've declared it as it returns a double value. So I have to let it return a double value. In this case, I can return squared variable. And it won't complain anymore. And for the square tree, if you can see here, you don't have a return keyword, but it won't complain. Why? Because it doesn't return anything, so you don't have, the compiler won't complain of anything. Okay, and we move onwards to the main method. In the main method, call the square method that you have created. Okay, so I create a main method. Regarding a question that was asked in the chat box just now, the main method can be declared anywhere as long as it is inside these brackets of the class, okay? You can declare it like at the bottom or at the top. Personally, I like to create it at the top so that I can track it easier. Because when you open the Java file, you will first be presented with the main method, and that will be easier for you to track your codes. Okay? So you say declare and assign the return value from the square method. Call the square method. Okay, how do I call it? I call square and then enter. Okay, let's say I give it a value 5 and put a semicolon. And declare and assign the return value from the square method. Okay, let's run the code first, see what does it output. Oh, weird. You can see here I've run squared 4, but it doesn't output anything in this particular case. So what can I do to remedy this situation is because this returns a double type. It doesn't print out the double type. So what I can do is I print it out, system.out.println, and I print it out, and remove this semicolon, and I print out the square of 5. So you can see here 25.0. In this case, declare and assign the return value from the square method. What does it mean is you declare a value to store the return value from the method. How? Okay, let's say we store a double. Why is it double? Because you will be passing in a double. You will be returning in a double. So let's say return value. Okay, and then this basically is, you can paste it here and add a semicolon. And then you put return value. So you run the code again, 25. So what it does is it returns 25, where you can see here you pass 5 in, you multiply 5 by 5, and it will return 25. Return to here, the 25 will store inside the return value, and you print the value out. So this is what square 4 does. And I will move onwards to the third source code, example source code, which is called square change. This is the question for square change, where it defines where you have to design a method named print square that receives an integer value. Okay, so I design a method first, public static. Okay, we don't know the return type yet, so we leave it blank first. Let's say the print square. This is the name, and we put a curly braces here. Print square. Okay. This method prints out. Okay, so when you see prints out, you can put void. Prints out the square value of a given integer. So given integer, you have to pass an integer value inside here. So you put integer, let's say value. Okay, you can put a value, or you can put x, you can put a, you can put num, you can put anything, any variable name. But please be careful with the naming conventions. Normally, we would be putting a good naming convention. We were using good naming convention. We give a descriptive name of it. So let's say x. In this case, it is x. We don't have to do anything. So this, and integer, it prints out the square value. Okay, so let's say integer squared value x multiplied by x. Okay, you can see here I put a descriptive name, so that means that this is the squared value of x. I can put a, and the code will run perfectly fine. But for naming conventions, we put more descriptive names so that other programmers can easily understand. Because in your mind, you only understand, okay, a is the squared value. But what if you pass this to your friend? Will he know that a is the squared value? Well, of course, this is the simple code. But when it comes to codes that are hundreds of lines, it is really hard to understand. Okay, so you take this and you print it out. System.out.println. Print print squared variable. And inside the main method, declare. I will declare my main method above so that it's easier to track. Declare an integer value name x with value 5. Okay, print out the value. Okay, let's say we give it a more descriptive main x equals to x. Okay, inside here we modify it a bit so that you can see the changes. Method x equals to, and then remember to concatenate it. Okay, you declare after you print out the x, and you call the print square method. So you call print square, and then you put x. Okay, pass the value x in. Print out the original value of x again. So I can basically copy this code, and then I run. What does it output? So you can see that main x equals to 5, main x equals to 25, main x equals to 5. So in this case, you can go to your main method and backtrack to what you have written. In this line, you declare a variable, integer variable named x with value of 5, and then you print out that value with main x equals to 5. So in this case, it's this one. And then you call the method. In this method, it multiplies the x by itself, and then you print out the x square, so which is 25, and you print out the x again. So what if I pass in 12? Sorry, 12. 12. It will become 144. Okay, so this is flexible. And that is all for square change. Moving onwards, we will be discussing about the scope. In this case, we won't have the questions for it. I will just discuss about the scope of a declared variable. Okay, from what you can see here, these curly braces here indicates that everything inside this code, this block of code, belongs to this if statement. Okay, and these curly braces here, you can see that this line here, it highlights that every code, each and every line of the code here belongs to this main method. So regarding this, there are scopes about scopes for an integer or a data type, any data type, Boolean, string, or anything. In this case, it is integer. So let's say we declare integer x equals to 5, integer y equals to 0, and let's run the code first. so that you can have a better idea. Okay, you can see here it prints out 2 times. So what does it do? At here, line 7, you can see if x equals to 5. So in this case, it is x equals to 5. If x is equals to 5, which is true, x is equals to 5, it will come inside here, it will reassign 6 into x. And then it reassigns 0 into y. And then line 10, it prints out the value. So system.print line, x equals to 6, y equals to 0. In this case, x equals to 6, y equals to 0. And then it comes out again and print system.print line, print again. So x equals to 6, y equals to 0. What if I move this line of code here? I declare the y inside this block. Let's run the code again and see what will happen. You can see here unresolved compilation problem. Y cannot be resolved to a variable. You can see it points towards lines 13, which it says the same thing, y cannot be resolved to a variable. Okay, what it means is that this y cannot be found anywhere inside this block of code. But why? Y is definitely here, right? So in this case, the scope of y declared here is within this if block only. You can see that this curly braces and the y is only inside here. So you can see that y can be used inside here. Okay, so the y here, don't throw an exception. You can see integer y equals to scope.main. Okay. So how do we solve this problem? We just remove this and put the y outside. Okay. So this will solve the problem. That means that y can be accessed. Why? Because it belongs to this block of code. Okay. And for your question, y can also be accessed here because this is within this block of code. So it's like a subset of this main method. And it can access the y itself. Okay. And we move onwards to the last question, which is the test for the last source code in the lecture slides. This is a bit of a puzzling one, but don't worry. It deals with the if, else, and else statements, which are the conditional statements. Let's read at the questions. Design a method named test that will check whether an integer value is greater than 5 and prints out the results. Okay, so public static is printing out, so we say void, and the name is test, and parenthesis, curly brackets. And in this case, you have to check a value, so you have to pass in an integer value. Why is it an integer? Because checks whether an integer value. You have to check an integer value, right? So I can pass in integer, let's say value. Okay, I give it a name called value. And how do I check if it is greater than 5? Then I use if statement. If statement, you can see here, I press tab. And this inside here is the condition. So how can I insert the condition? You passing in the value. If it is greater than 5, you print out. Value is greater than 5. Okay. Inside the main method, pass in value 6, 5, and 4 to the test method and check if it is greater than 5. So I create a main method. Main. Oops. Then it. Okay, I pass in the value. How do I call the method? I call the name, I type in the name, and then I pass the value 6. Again, 5. Test 4. Okay, this is how you call the methods. So let's say if you put a value 4.0, it will become an error because you are passing a double inside this integer, should be integer. So this violates the rule. This is illegal. So you have to pass accordingly to the parameters inside this method. Okay, so I run the code. It says 6 is greater than 5. Okay, yes, the code is somewhat working. Yes, definitely, because 5 is not greater than 5, 4 is not greater than 4. And 6 is greater than 5, so it works. Yes, it works right, it works correctly, but after completing it, try and modify the code to make it better. can you modify the code so that it tells you more about the integer passed in? So you pass in 5 and you pass in 4. But you would like to know that if it is greater, or what does it mean? Why doesn't it shows out any outputs? Okay, in this case, there are multiple cases we can use. So let's say this one is case 1. If it is greater than 5, print out this, the value is greater than 5. Or you can use else if. Else if value less than 5. Remember your curly brackets. System.println value is less than 5. Okay, so I run the code again. You can see here 4 is less than 5. Yes, this is correct. 6 is greater than 5. Yes, this is correct. However, 5 doesn't print out, but we know that 5 is equals to 5. So how do we modify the code again? So we can put another else if value equals to 5, print out system.println value is equals to 5. So in this case, we run the code, and you can see it is working perfectly. This is I can say that this is the perfect code, because you can know that what it passes in. Okay, so let's say we pass in 100, we pass in -5, we pass in 5, 5, okay. So I run the code. 100 is greater than 5. -5 is less than 5. 5 is equals to 5. So as you increase it or you decrease it, the code will ultimately give you the information about the value passed in. So in this case, the value can either be, there are only 3 cases. Either it can be greater, less than, or equals to 5. There are no like other cases like case 4, like it is, let's say, higher or don't know what cases lah. So in this case, in maths, there are only greater, equals, or less than. So we can eliminate this this if statement, because if it is not greater than 5, it is not less than 5, then it must be equals to 5. So this is the last case. So I run the code again, and it outputs the same thing. So this else is used when you are confirmed that if all of the value passed in here isn't correct, then you want it to go to a default value, let's say is equals to 5, then you can use this else to end the if statement. Okay. You can also use a lot of if, but that is redundant. So you can use if, else, if. You can actually use if value greater than 5, and then you print out something greater than 5 here. And then, or you can use if value less than 5, you can also print out less than 5 here. Or you can use if value equals to 5, you can print out 5 is equals to, value is equals to 5. But in this case, we will all combine it into an if statement, an if, else statement. So this, you can see here, it is what similar to the lecture slides. And that is all for this tutorial session and the lecture session for today. For your information, the codes and the materials used today, the lecture slides, will be published on our website. Please check it out if you would like to use the materials. The recorded video for today will be posted in our YouTube channel in a few days. And for further or future updates, please follow our Instagram or Facebook page. And right now, I welcome any questions. If there's any questions from you, are there any questions from you guys? I'll give it around 2 minutes, 9:35. If there's no questions, I will end the session here. 2 more minutes. You can ask anything you would like, anything you still have any doubts or queries on. if there's any code that I've written or there are codes that are written inside the lecture slides that are not clear to you or anything, please ask now. Let's see. Scope multiply. Okay, if that's the case, I will end today's session here. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you on the next session. Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Guys, okay, so thank you, Darren, for the tutorial session. Guys, if you think you like to get a bit more highlight on what went on in this session about the lecture, about the tutorial, stick around for about a few minutes for me to do a quick recap for you guys about the highlights of the session, okay? So basically, this session, the highlight was more on method declarations and the conditions, okay? So basically, we have methods. Methods are basically Java's way of creating functions, okay, to use them in different situations. Basically, when you want to create, you're declaring a method. I'll try to have some terminologies here and there for your better understanding and familiarity with programming reference. So every method has a header, basically what comes before this scope, and includes some basic characteristics of the method like access privileges. We call them access modifiers. Return time, you guys saw void this session, which means no return time. And we have the identifier, basically the name that you put for your method. And after that, you have the parameters, which again, you went in depth in this session, okay? So if another terminology for you guys, if a method has no parameters like this, it's blank, we call it a default argument method. Basically, it has no parameters, so it's default, okay? After that, we have the statements. Statements that which you saw in our graphs are basically the block of code you write in the method scope. What are scopes? Basically, from here to here, anything that's between the curly braces, we call it this scope of the method, okay? Which structures the functionality of the method based on the header, such as return type and parameters. So if a method has a return type, you need to add the return type in the method. If it doesn't, you can't add it, okay? And if you have parameters, you need to implement accordingly. So what are parameters? Parameters are basically the variables we use that can be directly used as a function, such as the multiply, which you saw in the tutorial session, that we pass two integers, all right? It takes two integers as parameters and performs a function on them, right? So in this case, it was the multiply. Note, some methods need to be created by you guys. Okay, so basically programming is you guys being able to implement the logic you have from mathematics, from probabilities, from whatever knowledge you have. But Java, to make your life a bit easier, has some built-in functionalities as well. Like you saw the math functions, math sine, math cosine, and such. We have the contents and equals, which you'll see in the following sessions and more. Okay. So the second highlight of this session was conditionals. Conditionals are basically Java's way of using Boolean logic, the true-false logic, in creating scenarios. Basically, this is the entire structure of a condition at its maximum extent. Okay, so if a condition is existing and this condition is satisfied, do this method. Okay, do this statement. Else, if another condition different from this one is satisfied, then do this one. And if none of these conditions are satisfied, do this one. Right, guys? So that's basically the structure of conditions and how you can use if, and else accordingly. Right, guys? So basically, if I want to go into the data structure and the way that Java understands this for you guys to know more about this, is that if you say if x is equal, remember the operators, double equal means equal, right? It checks for equality in that assignment. If x is equal to 2, print x is equal to 2, right, guys? So the way that Java interprets this is that it reads the condition, x equal to 2, And based on the existing value, so based on the value that x has, it will give a value of either true or false. So if before this we have given the program or made it made the word that x is equal to 2, the value of this condition is true. Other than that, it will be false. And if the code is true, if the condition is satisfied, it will be executed. So we will have x is equal to 2. If false, like this condition, like if it's false, it will be neglected by the compiler. So if we have this scenario where this condition is false, this code doesn't get executed. So basically, if the program comes this line, it reads the condition, then it will skip. It will go to this line and read this one. So basically, when it reads one and it's true, it will jump to the statements. It will read it, and line by line, it will execute. Another note for you guys, you can use conditions in various situations, such as setting a password. Basically, that's a logic you see in the login interfaces, like your computer, like your PC, like your phone, or simply instantiating a logical condition for a specific scenario to occur, same as here. So guys, an extra practice for you guys is to try to create a simple login program that has a password set by you guys, whatever password you want to set, and then use the scanner to take inputs from users to see if the password works. Okay, so basically you can implement this via if and else. Okay, basically conditions. So that was our recap of the session. The focus of the session was on more method declarations and conditionals. If you have no other questions from us, the tutors, or the lecturer, feel free to leave, and we thank you for joining us on the session. All right, guys? We'll see you on 16th for more in loops, arrays, and more. All right, guys? Thank you so much for joining. We hope you liked the session. Please feel the reviews. We hope the sessions are digestible for you guys. We hope that they're understandable. We will do our best to make sure that you enjoy the session and get the most out of it. All right, guys? Thank you so much for joining. We hope you like them. Have a nice night. I will give about 2 minutes to make sure that none of you have any questions. If not, I will end the session. All right, guys? Yes, the entirety of the session will be uploaded as an extra. If you guys enjoy them and if you guys like the recap sessions, the basically the 5 minutes at the end of each session, I'll try to upload the notes on the same page that we upload the videos. You'll also have them demonstrated by me in the meeting as we're still recording. Thank you.